Hello, this is Jasmine and welcome to another art video. I will be painting this piece up here today, but before I get into the time lapse, I thought I would bring you along a little bit on the process of how I go about making a larger piece like this or like this one. So it all starts with my handy dandy sketchbook. I do all of my planning in here, and for this one I did a bunch of studies. So I did a bunch of studies of coyotes and like the positioning that I wanted on the illustration. So I knew that one would be dark and one would be light because they are specific characters, and this is what I came up with. So I like to do little tiny thumbnails as well as studies of the type of subject that I will be doing, just to get myself used to the shapes and textures that I'm going to want to be working with. So I did a larger study as well, and this is very much how it ended up turning out. Once I know what I'm going to be sketching, I grabbed myself a board. We had these extra pieces of this desk laying around, and then I have this small foam paint roller that I gesso the board with. You can see it's got a bit of texture. So what I do is I gesso with the roller, which leaves this really stucco-like kind of texture. And I do that twice. And then with a fine grit sandpaper, I sand it down real good until it's the smoothness that I want. I like a little bit of texture here, but not nearly as much as a canvas has. Well, not the same kind of texture either. It's a really nice sort of eggshell feel to it. And the paint roller, I'm not sure how many people will know this, but I keep mine in my freezer. I don't bother to wash it. So if you stick a paintbrush or like a paint roller or something in just zip it up in a Ziploc bag, toss it in the freezer, it will never dry out. I do this because I have enough room in my freezer. You might not, but I always just use that roller for gesso, so it's a good place to put it. It doesn't need washed, it won't get linty, it won't get cat fur. So now I have my sketches, my concept, and my surface is ready, but I'm still not ready to go directly into an illustration because I need to find good references. And what I do is I just Google references and I make sure they're not AI. And I use a lot of different references. I use the Milanote app, or I guess website. It's got a bunch of different functions. I don't do much with it other than create these boards. So this one is for January because these are my member rewards, and I have all of my references here. You can see some of them that I had used for the sketches, and these are giving me references for face poses, ears, this 3/4 kind of view. I used this one for the mouth open, this one for one of the faces, this one for the ears. I might have used this one's face, some color here. These are wolves, and then these are just sketches and texture for the fur and the moons, and I just combine all of that and make an actual sketch then directly on here with my pencil, and from there we go straight into the painting. So I will be taking you through a time-lapse painting next. The first thing I'm doing is giving my cat lots of attentions in hopes that she doesn't bother me too much while I'm painting, and it mostly worked. She always comes up when I'm doing a stream, and I did this entire painting except for a couple final touches on stream. And I'm adding down a base coat. In retrospect, maybe I should have done a base coat in a different medium because I'm using open acrylics, which are slow drying, and it's the first time I've ever used them. But because I watered it down so much, I don't really think it took that long to dry. I am really loving these Golden Open Acrylics. I think they're just absolutely wonderful to work with. There's a couple points where maybe I should have used a different type of acrylic so that it would dry a little faster, such as the base coat on the background, but that's quite a bit farther in. What I'm doing right now is what I usually do, which is laying down my darkest darks. This isn't actually as dark as they will be, but this is at least giving me the area where the darks will be, and I'm kind of carving the figure out that way. I'm not outlining. I've got my sketch there to guide me, but I'm going directly in and basically just making form with my colors instead of with lines. I believe I'm using raw umber for this, straight out of the tube. I ended up pretty much using 3 colors most of the time. This was a fairly limited palette, but they were primaries, so it wasn't really that limiting. I used one of the yellows, one of the blues, and one of the reds, and I also used quite a bit of raw umber, so I guess more like a 4-color palette. And I really like working that way. I don't like to use greens straight from the tube very often. I can, but I find that I gravitate towards just making my own, because then I can really get the exact hue that I'm going for. While I lay down these base coats of just some darks and some highlights, I do the highlights in like Titan Buff, I believe. I figured I'd talk a little bit about what I'm working on. So I decided this year to focus my Patreon and Ko-fi rewards around the world and the world building that I'm doing. I'm working on my own fantasy world. I was originally going to have it based on the Pathfinder rules. If you know, they're similar to Dungeons & Dragons 3rd or 3.5 edition rules. And I really like those, but I found myself having so many little changes that I wanted to do based on how I run a campaign, and then also things from older editions that I wish that I could incorporate, and things with the classes on how I wanted them to work, that I ended up going, you know what? I'm going to make my own. So I'm making my own rule system. My world, I think of my world similar to like traditional Dungeons and Dragons. It's not got a bunch of like silly aspects. Obviously, if you're going to play in the world, you can make your campaign however silly you want, but think more along the lines of, if it was to be a movie, it would be more similar to something like Lord of the Rings. Yeah, there's funny, there's, you know, there's your Pippin characters, there's the competition between the elf and the dwarf and such, but there's not the over-the-top goofiness that a lot of fantasy has. I find it refreshing to read a fantasy series that is not overly silly. But again, everyone could play however they want to. But as far as like the characters and the creatures and the lore that I'm putting in there, I'm trying not to have a lot of reference to our Earth lore and stuff. Obviously, that's all that I can take from, because I don't know any... my phone keeps interrupting me. Because I don't know any, you know, alien worlds that I can take lore from. But I wanted to do star signs, and I had already written up a whole bunch of them, and I want them to have an actual impact in the gameplay. Like, if your star signs don't align, small impact, but like an impact to how you would get along with another character, like maybe how well you would be able to do persuasion type checks and that kind of thing. So for my Ko-fi and Patreon, since I'm focusing on my own world so that I can have fun and get people excited about it. By the way, it's called Seref, that's the world. I am illustrating these star signs, and I'm sending out a horoscope for everyone. Not like what horoscope you are, but what the horoscope that corresponds to the month that I'm painting is. And there's only 9 star signs, so the general the general theme is celestial. So I'll have some information during some of the months about like the moons and stuff like that, other celestial bodies. And these guys are called the Hounds, and they're from January 1st through February 9th. And because there is only 9 star signs, and because I'm not trying to base it on Earth, your star sign will not correspond to your earthly star sign. So your Serefian star sign, if you are January 1st through February 9th, it would be the Hounds. And also the months, they're not called the same things in Seref, but the Hounds are these 2 creatures called Henula and Kelhaya. So the pale one is Kelhaya and the dark one is Henula. And they're like mythological creatures, but because it's a fantasy world, they're not actually myth. They do exist, but they fill the same kind of role as mythological beings that have been seen throughout all of the ages and all of the continents, pretty much. And the cry of one of these coyotes, of Henula, is death to all that hear it. And the cry of Kelhaya, the white one, is true resurrection to everything in earshot. And so they have their own horoscope and their own stars in the sky that people associate with them. And I'm really, really excited to move on to the next ones for February. I'm already sketching it out, the next star sign, and I think everybody is having a lot of fun and really enjoying it. If you want to follow along more, twitch.tv/JasmineZelmer. I have read the horoscope multiple times on stream while I was streaming this, and I'm doing the process of all of them on there for people to watch. And if you would like to sign up to get your own horoscope as well as an exclusive sketch print of the process, which I showed you some of the process in my sketchbook, then I am Jasmine Zelmer on Ko-fi as well as on Patreon, whichever one you would like to sign up to. This is a fairly basic painting process. I went down with a base flat wash after I put down some shadows and highlights, but I then went down with this purple color, and I really, really like the effect that that gave. I think it's just such a nice background pop of color. Like once I finish it, it's very subtle because I put all the fur texture and stuff on top. And then this is where my art hits that ugly stage, and I'm like, oh no. But I trust the process. I'm putting down brown tones because generally speaking, coyotes and wolves and such, they will have a lot of brown tones in their fur. And although these are mythological kind of creatures, with the pure white one and the pure black one, I still wanted them to look natural. I didn't want them to look like a bright white glowing coyote and a like deep black unmarked void coyote, you know. So I'm working these brown tones in there and hoping that they will show through in the final after I have added more fur texture and stuff on top, and it does work quite well, even though I was a little concerned about it. I do have to rework some of things, like a bit of the bridge of the nose on several of the coyotes, or on like both of the coyotes got a little wonky. So I had to rework that a couple times. But because these are acrylic paints, I hope you can't hear Evie just snuffling the microphone. She hopped up on my desk and she's like, "What's this? You're talking? Are you talking to me?" But yeah, because these are acrylics, I can just continue to layer up as much as I want. But these are, again, slow drying acrylics, so I have to worry a little bit about that. I'm going back in here, as I mentioned earlier, with darks to really intensify the shadows. Those shadows on the back are supposed to give the like the appearance of the way fur will kind of separate if it's a nice thick coat. So it's not actually supposed to be like markings or fur itself. I also, somewhere around here, realized that the black coyote needs to be a lot darker, but I would rather start a little bit darker, or I would rather start a little bit lighter and work my way towards dark, especially since I wanted to give it this fading into the background kind of effect. And I was worried a few times that the coyote would get a little bit lost in the background once I put in a dark background around it. But again, that's kind of the point, right? Like, this is the mysterious, dark, rather menacing one of the group. And I kind of like the focal point being on the white coyote. And then you realize, oh, and there's a dark one next to it, like a yin-yang sort of effect going on here. So I'm really darkening that one up with just a few washes here and there. Working on some of the shading of the other, and I believe I'm mixing my own black here, but I also use a little bit of the black that comes with the acrylics. Also, I'm sorry about the bright lighting going on. I was trying to have my palette in a frame while also put down some papers to stop the bright ring light from reflecting on my palette, which didn't work very well because it turns out those papers were just going to get blown out into like this blindingly white hot spot on the side. So the next time that I do a stream like this, I will either put darker papers down or just move the palette out of frame. But hopefully you aren't too bothered by that. I'm going in with more details here, just kind of just all over the coyotes, getting the fur a little more defined. I go over the fur quite a few times, just adding more and more dark hairs, and then towards the end I go in with the highlights. But I always start dark first and then I go in with the highlights later, and I do almost this entire piece with my one and only little filbert brush. You'll see right now I'm using a bigger brush, but that's because I'm going to go in on the background, and the background is by far like the ugliest phase. I talked about the ugly phase on the coyotes, but this background, it goes through some things. I actually pulled up several references that are not on my mood board because I didn't really think about the background very much in the beginning. I knew that I wanted it to be kind of just like a dark, misty forest, and I was gonna just wing it, but then I thought to myself of an artist, Robert Bateman, who does beautiful like nighttime misty kind of scenes fairly frequently. He does a lot of, well, he does almost exclusively nature scenes, And so I looked up some of his paintings so that I could maybe try and replicate some of the colors and the moodiness and really get that feel in my piece, while keeping it more of a kind of mysterious fantasy piece. And I knew I wanted this blue in the background. It ends up a bit less intense than this, so I'm kind of greening it up a little because I want it to be a forest scene, and it's really difficult to describe how I go about it because I go so many layers, and I don't think I'm the one to ask about painting backgrounds. I just kind of keep throwing paint at it until it looks right. I'm not good at just getting the right tones and the right forms right away. So I keep going in with these blues and greens and doing sort of an abstract background. Right here I tried to bring in the misty aspect, but I carved their legs back out with a damp brush later because I just didn't like covering them up so much. You'll see the background goes through a lot. But to add the forest aspect, I'm really toning down these greens. It is green, but it's almost blue and almost gray. It's a very blue-gray green that I go in with just to make some vaguely tree shapes. I don't want them too detailed. They're not really the focal point here. And then towards the bottom, I turn them into kind of a jumbled mess because I live in the forest basically, and I know that the forest floor, unless it's like really, really old forest, is just a tangled mess. I also throw a little bit of highlights on the trees. I'll do that periodically throughout working on the background, although I do believe I go back to the wolves or coyotes and work on them a little more. I kept calling them wolves, and I blame Galacticat, Galacticat Studios here on YouTube, but primarily on Twitch. If you're watching this, you're the reason I keep calling them wolves. No, it was funny because she was painting a jackal that she kept calling a wolf just before I started painting these. Alright, here we go in with this thick layer down here that I don't necessarily regret because it got me where I'm going, and you can see that I fade the edges up into this nice misty kind of look, but I was like, the legs, I've lost the legs. So I had to work back in with a damp brush to bring these legs back. And it's, again, the coyotes are not finished, so I put more detail back onto them, and I'm using, if you'll notice, a really, really far back grip, like far back loose grip on my paintbrush here to get these kind of wispy fur strokes that I'm doing now. It's really just so that I don't accidentally put too much pressure down, because I want these, like, I use these like light flicks of my wrist to get these wispy kind of effects, and that only really works with a little bit of a dry brush kind of effect. If it was too damp, it would go on like a little too thick, like too covering. And then when I go to tighten up the details of the face, I also tighten up my grip so that I have more precision, but I'm still trying to be really, really light-handed with it. The ticking pattern on fur, which is where primarily like wolves and coyotes and huskies and such will have this pattern where some of the fur has all these little black hairs in it. It can be really, really tricky. But what I like to do is I put down my base coat with kind of chunky strokes, as you've seen. I put down a base color, I put down colors for the different areas, like the brown on the face, and then I go in with some chunky highlights and shadows, keeping in mind any kind of pattern. And then I go in with really dark black for the ticking, and I don't just go over the highlight areas where you would see it. I also go over the darker areas and make sure that this is a darker color so that you can see that it's uniform. And I do this really lightly, and doing that underneath the highlight layer, in my opinion, is like the way to go. At least for my style of painting, because it just, every time I've tried to put the dark on after the light, it just doesn't look quite right. Fixing up this cheek, because I realized it looked like this one just had like a huge floofy cheek, when it's supposed to be like a bit of a thinner face, and that's supposed to be more of the fur coming down around the chest area and such. It really gets blended out a lot in the end, but you can make these decisions on the fly and you can work your painting like this. You don't have to have the most precise anatomy from the beginning. You're carving it out like you're carving it out of stone, right? You're like, oh, there's too much here, carve some out. Or you can always add a little more. I guess that's more like clay, not so much like stone. You can't really add stone back very well. Whatever, you get my point, right? Now I'm working on the ticking on the white coyote, and I'm trying to be even more sparing with this. I want those markings on there because I want it to look real. But again, this is going to be a white creature, so I'm really nervous at this point while I'm painting it that I'm going to be able to make it look white. But I'm pretty certain I pull it off in the end. I also darken the eyes. They were just getting a bit too stark while I was painting. They were getting distracting. They're actually going to have moons in their eyes. So Kalhaya has full moon eyes with like little stars around the edges, and Henula has new moon eyes with little stars around the edges. And I thought that was just a fun thing to add in there. They don't necessarily have any specific tie to the sky or the moon or anything like that other than this feature, and they're not within the world highly, like nothing much is known about them other than what they are, what they do. But as far as the lore behind why they are and why they do what they do, it's pretty much a scholarly debate, and I do write a little bit more about that to my members on my Ko-fi and Patreon, just like little snippets of lore. I have it like written up in a way that sounds like a scholar is talking about it, and I'm gonna have various different authors from my world, Seref, that write these different snippets. I got almost all the way through a voiceover before a really big loud vehicle had to come driving past. I don't worry too much though about making these voiceovers perfect. I prefer natural. I've talked about this before. I prefer just a natural voice. I have nothing scripted. Every once in a while I do bullet points, but like this whole thing, no script. I'm sure you can tell. I'm going in with the highlights now. So like I said, I put the black ticking down first, and I'm being really, really sparing on the highlights with this coyote because, you know, they're really, really dark. I have this, I I don't know what you would call it, not a theory. But I have something I live by when I'm making my paintings like this, and it's something that James Gurney wrote about. I generally just call it like the windmill effect or something like that. There's a famous painting with a windmill. I can't remember the artist's name, unfortunately, but it's one of those masters, you know, one of the old-timey artists. And in the painting, you can clearly see in the windmill there are areas within the painting that are light on dark and areas that are dark on light, which is what you typically think of when you're thinking about making sure that the composition has plenty of contrast. However, in this really amazing illustration, there is also areas that are dark on dark and light on light. And I try and get all four into my painting as well. So I try and have areas where there is lots of contrast with dark against light and light against dark, such as the two coyotes' faces being next to each other. But I also try and incorporate areas where there is dark against dark and light against light. I think that just makes more of a natural feel in your paintings if you're going for a believable scene. Not everything is going to have contrast. And you want some parts maybe to fade away, fade into the background without just, you know, fuzzing them out and having them literally fade away. And so it's not really obvious yet, but the dark coyote is a very good example of this, where I have a lot of dark on dark, and it just works for the piece because they're supposed to be these mysterious beings coming out of the mist. If anyone else has this kind of method that they follow, or any other methods that you're like tried and true in your illustrations, let me know. I'd love to hear about them. And let me know what you think of this. Method is the word I was looking for, the windmill method of painting. I just think it's a very good way of making a cohesive environmental piece with figures in it and all that. Also, if you have made it this far into the video, holy heck, comment moon or leave like a moon icon down below to let me know that you've gotten this far, and let me know what your favorite moon phase is. I feel like full moon, the bright, beautiful full moon, yeah, it's really pretty, and I think it's a lot of people's favorite, but I am a huge sucker for a crescent moon. I love just like that thin sliver of crescent moon bright in the night sky. I just think it's the most beautiful, the most elegant moon phase that there is. And maybe everybody doesn't have a favorite moon phase. Maybe it's not like favorite animal or favorite color or something. But I feel like everybody I've talked to so far does have a favorite moon phase. Oh, this is an interesting part. So I'm putting some color into like the mouth and stuff. And also a little bit in the ears, the places you would expect, because they're thinner. You can see the blood vessels. There's not the fur there, but also because I have a white coyote here, I put a little more red on the nose, and I also just worked a little more of the reddish pink color throughout, because like on the legs and near the eyes and stuff, white fur tends to let a little more of the skin show through. And also dark colored animals often have dark colored skin, whereas a white animal often has pink skin. So I worked a little bit of pink into the muzzle and such as well. Here I'm working on the eyes. I thought they were going to be difficult, but they were actually really, really, really easy. because the eye around them is so dark, all I had to do is paint a little white circle and add some grayish kind of dots and just let them blend a little bit how they would. I tried to keep them the same on both. Seref has more than one moon. It has a bunch of moons, and I will talk about that in a later painting because I will be doing that for one of the months. One of the member months will focus around the moons of Seref. And these craters that I put in them, I wanted to make sure it didn't look like Earth's moon. So I just put random craters in. But I did try and keep them the same for both of them, as though they're reflecting one of the specific moons. I don't know which one. I'm going back in to define these noses. There's a quote on my stream. Let me define this nostril, I believe it is. But you know, noses are hard. I find noses to be one of the most difficult parts of almost any animal, unless it's like a bunny or something that just has like the little slits on the side for the nose. But even so, from like a side view, bunny noses are kind of weird and kind of difficult. So yeah, noses are difficult. I'm finally going in and putting some detail on these teeth too. Another thing that I was a little concerned about, but once I got to it, I was just like, oh, I just slapped some color down and it's already blending a bit with the background by not being entirely opaque. And then I just go add a little bit of shadow and voila, it looks nice. It doesn't need to be overly detailed. The focal point is like the eyes and the fur and the faces. So I'm trying not to do too much unnecessary detail while still making it look nice and detailed. I do love putting these whiskers in though. I love adding the whiskers. I made sure to keep them nice and short and sparse because coyotes' whiskers are not overly prominent like a cat's are. And a tip when you're doing a dark animal like this is add a little bit of white in the whiskers as well to just represent reflections on the dark whiskers, because that way you can still see that they're there, but you know, just they're not blending entirely in. At this point, I wanted to make sure that the characters were still a little more grounded in the scene. They're supposed to be coming out of the dark forest into this like chilly mist, and I wanted them to have plenty of shadow. I don't know what's highlighting their face, but their faces are in the primary light sources coming from the right and in front of them. So I wanted to push their backs farther. I mixed up a really dark bluish kind of color to sort of match the background a bit, and especially on the white coyote I just really pushed it back, and that also made the whites and the focal point pop a lot more. I'm being pretty loose with the like the edges and the outline kind of areas with the fur because it is going to be a misty kind of background. I'm not too worried about having defined fur, defined legs, etc. I want them to fade back. I'm finally going in with titanium white. This is the first time in this painting that I have used pure white. And I do want to use pure white to get these highlights in here. Before this, I was using a little bit of white mixed with some other stuff, and oftentimes I was using this Titan Buff color, which is kind of an eggshell color, maybe a little darker than eggshell. And I'm also using this to add those highlights around the eyes as well as the little stars. There's a couple of the stars that I wasn't a huge fan of, but because this paint doesn't dry too fast, I could just use a little bit of water on my brush and kind of rub them away. And that also would sometimes make it just like a faded looking star, which I thought was also very, very nice. I was extremely sparing with the pure white on the dark coyote because I didn't want any like intense highlights. Again, it's supposed to be the more muted of the two, and there's a lot of shadow going on because the light is coming from the right as well. So we basically have almost no highlights on the left side at all, just a little bit of variation in the light. We could call it bounce light from the fog or something like that, because I wanted it to like have form. I didn't want it to be like solid black on that side. We are coming up on the end now as I rework the background a bit and darken it up, and I want to say a huge thank you to my supporters on Patreon and Ko-fi. I'm going to put them up here on the screen, which is something I want to do in my videos going forward, because I am trying to make it as a full-time artist, and these are the people that help me buy my groceries, that help me feed my cats, and that help me keep on living my dream. After a few more layers on the background, I try and add the mist. I use a wet on wet technique at first. So this is watered down acrylic that I put directly into these wet areas that I have made roughly where I want the mist to go, and I just kind of let it spread around. And I don't show it, but I do also go in with my little filbert brush and very, very softly add in more white, like more concentrated white with a sort of a dry brush effect. And I love the way it turned out, and I think that this piece is probably my all-time favorite at the moment. Let me know what you think of it. Let me know what you think of this year being all about celestial and star signs of my world. Do you think that's a cool idea? But regardless, just leave a comment, leave a like if you liked it, and thank you so much for stopping by.